What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Saturday edition of the Recountdown NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. We made it. This is our sixth show in a row this week. I'll be honest, a little tired, a little wired. I have some caffeine on me, so we're good to go. Last night's slate was an interesting one. The only expensive line that really did anything worth it was Colorado. I mean, Barkov scored in OT to get over 20 DK points, but you needed McKinnon, you needed Makar, you needed Igor Shesterkin to really have a deep cash. Igor, what were you talking? We were talking about it this morning. It was his most goals saved above expected game in his career.
Yeah. On the heels of Elvis Merzlikins having his best game in 146 starts, Igor Shesterkin had his best game of his career by goals saved above expected, according to Evolving Hockey, and his goals saved above expected was higher than the entire 2021 bubble season combined.
Yeah, and I think you said that there was 9 teams who've had 21 shots on goal in the power play or something like that.
It was 5 teams in the last 3 seasons have a game with at least 20 power play shots. Every team except for Dallas scored at least 1 goal, and 3 out of the other 4 teams scored, I think it was 2, 2, and 4.
Just a ridiculous game from Igor, masking all the Rangers' problems that he can do that from time to time. So 40-something saves for Igor. He gave up a goal in his first shot to Rope Hintz and just locked it down. Yeah. Can't hit the nuts tonight if you're not playing. There is some Saturday NFL going on right now. Corporate greed, whatever. This is an interesting slate because it's not super surprising that the Devils have the highest total on the slate. It's surprising that the Flyers have the second highest total. I don't know, man. Most of the big totals are at home. There's only one team total, 2 team totals, 3 are up on the road, and Detroit is one of them. This is a home and home with the Montreal, and then Columbus in Philly has the other 3 total. Everyone else is 2.6 or lower on the road. So this feels like a throwback slate from a few years ago where the home teams get the big totals, the road teams gets the low totals, and we go about our day. It's nice because I kind of prefer stacking home teams when they have, compared to road teams when they have the big totals. I don't know how you feel about that, but I like knowing that they can get the last change.
Yeah, for me, I just kind of follow the projections. I don't really read into it that much, but what I do like about this slate, no Tampa Bay, no Colorado, no Edmonton. We'll get to Toronto in a second. Austin Matthews is out for Toronto. There's really not much for expensive options on the board, and nights like that always open up the slate a lot, and I like nights like that.
Yeah, I always say it's nice not to have to decide between 25,000, 31% Colorado won or not in single entry. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. Let's get into this slate. Nice little 8-gamer, nice little mid-sized slate. If you do want to go premium with us, you don't have to, but if you do, you can click that link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off any subscription for your first week or month. I saw a bunch of you do that yesterday with some NFL Max subscriptions. You guys are crazy, but we appreciate you. Let's get into this slate. New York Islanders with a 2.7 total heading into Toronto. The Leafs have a 3.3. I did the run sheet before Matthews got ruled out, so I don't know. I would assume. Ooh, excuse me. I would assume that the team total for Toronto might dip a little bit. Nothing drastic. We don't know what the lines are going to be. We were kind of discussing it before we came on here that they're probably just going to move Max Domi up and call it a day, but honestly, we don't know. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint what you want to do with Toronto, especially because this isn't the best power play spot, because the Islanders are one of the lowest penalized teams in the NHL. I think Seattle's up there, but they don't take a lot of penalties. If, Nylander, Tavares, Pacioretty are together, that would be the line I'd be interested in. Like, I played Domi last night, but on the third line with McMahon and Robertson against the depleted Sabres team. I know the Islanders aren't great, but they're getting healthy again, and they have 3 decent lines. Whether they're, good for DFS, that's another story, but at least their bottom 6, like they have been when Barzal is out, it's just absolute garbage. Like, it would be Nylander, Tavares, Pacioretty for me. I just have to wait and see if they're together, and they're almost 20,000 as it is. So I don't particularly love the Leafs here without Matthews. We'll have to see the lines. We won't know till warm-ups, so it's a bit complicated. On the Islander side is interesting, especially if they move Domi up, which they're probably going to have to do in some capacity. Austin Matthews being out is not only hurts them offensively, it hurts them defensively, and it hurts more than one line defensively because you have to move Domi up. That hurts that line awfully. And then the bottom 6 is just worse than it is already. So I guess you have to consider Islanders here, but man, like I don't know what line. I think for me, it would be Nelson, Duclair, Palmieri. They're fully correlated on the second unit. I don't have too much interest in Horvat, Sipelkoff, Holmstrom at 11.5. Like, Simone Holmstrom does nothing for me. Horvat and Sipelkoff have, a decent sample so far this season. It is pretty good offensively, pretty bad defensively, but you throw Holmstrom into the mix, I don't think it helps. I think it makes them worse. So it would be Duclair, Nelson, Palmieri for me. I think Barzal, Lee, and Pajot are fine. You can leave Pajot off if you want, do like a Barzal, Lee 2-man for the, power play. The Leafs don't have the best penalty kill. They're going to have guys out of place here tonight, so they may struggle defensively. I don't really want to consider Islanders here, but because of pieces moving, I think you have to at least consider it. But they're giving me Seattle vibes with these lines, with their minutes. You know what I mean? They have 3 playable lines now, so I don't think any one of them is going to see any significant type of minutes.
So as far as Toronto goes, I wonder if they don't go back to the old line that they had last year of, was it Nyes, Domi, and Nylander, and then just reunite Tavares and Marner. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But like, we just won't know until warm up. What I will say is I agree with you on the Tavares, Nylander, Pacioretty deal. Like, if those 3 are together, like they have been as good as the Matthews line this year offensively. 3.7 expected goals, 4.1 actual goals per 60 minutes. Pacioretty's chipping in. Like, he scored last night. He has 20 shots in his last 10 games. So he's not the shot monster he was 5 years ago, but he's still shooting a fair bit for his minutes. I don't know what they're going to do with the power play. I assume Domi just goes under the top unit. So, in that case, Pacioretty would be on the second unit, and then it's still just Tavares and Nylander. But they've been really, really good this year. I really do like that combination. But if we get to warm-ups and it's something completely different, like it's tough to say, play this from Toronto. All I'll say is that if Pacioretty, Tavares, and Nylander is a line in warmups, that is a line I would have a lot of interest in this matchup. On the Islanders side, I was looking. The Nelson Palmieri line, they were really good with Maxim Siplikov. Like we talked about that, right? That was a really, really good line. I was looking at how Nelson and Palmieri have done this season with any other winger, and they have gotten their teeth kicked in. Whether it's been minutes with Anders Lee, whether it's been minutes with Pierre Engvall, it hasn't mattered. They are getting throttled defensively, and they're really not generating that much offensively. And I was thinking to myself, there's no way Max Siplikov has that big of an impact. And then I went into Evolving Hockey and I looked at the expected goals for differential impact. Siplikov is top 10 in the NHL for forwards this year. He's between Anthony Cirelli and Sebastian Aho. I knew he was playing well. I didn't realize it was that high. And if you look at his goals impact, it's somewhere between Brady Tkachuk and Jack Hughes. It is preposterous how good he's been. And I'm wondering if he wasn't just driving that Nelson Palmieri line himself. Because, I was looking at Brock Nelson's numbers. Brock Nelson has 17 shots on goal in his last 10 games. He is not shooting very much. So, and a lot of that time has been with Siplikov on a different line. So I'm wondering if Siplikov hasn't been the big driver all year long. Horvat, Siplikov, and Holmstrom doesn't really interest me. But, Siplikov one power play unit, Horvat on another. It's split power play. The Leafs do take a ton of short-ended chances, but Horvat, Siplikov, and Holmstrom is 11,500. It feels like they are a decent filler line to put with any expensive stacks that you might have tonight, whether you're playing, New Jersey, whether you're playing Winnipeg, Ottawa, something like that. It feels like Horvat and Siplikov could have a decent night here tonight with Austin Matthews out of the lineup. And I was looking at, Horvat and Siplikov have played 90 minutes together this year, 3.4 expected goals, 3.1 actual goals per 60. Maybe Siplikov really has been the best Islanders forward this season. So it's the Siplikov, Horvat, Holmstrom line I would have interest in from the Islanders side as a filler. I do have interest in Tavares, Pacioretty, Nylander, assuming they're a line at warmups, but we just won't know until warmups start.
Yeah. Detroit Red Wings with a 3.1 total. Heading into Montreal, the Canadiens have a 3 total. These two played last night in Detroit. Montreal won 4-3, I think it was. Pat Laine continuing his hot streak, scoring a power play go-ahead goal late in the third. Ridiculous. There is a lot less ownership on this game today than there is yesterday, but the Wings looked atrocious yesterday. So I don't have any faith that these lines are going to stick together. What I will say is I will double down on how bad these power play units are. I hate them, and I wish they were different. Because I think you could just go Larkin, Raymond, DeBrincat. But guess what? DeBrincat and Kane are on a different unit than Larkin and Raymond. The top unit is what? Larkin, Raymond, Comfort, Casper, and Sider. Who gives a crap what the second unit is really, but it's Tarasenko, DeBrincat, Kopp, Kane, and Gustafson. I don't understand why these coaches, if they don't have one power play unit that can't do anything, they try to get 2 that can't do anything. Just load the power play unit and call it a day. As it is, I don't have a ton of interest in Detroit. I do like the 2-man of Larkin and Raymond. If we get to warm-ups and they're with Tarasenko, fine. I'm still okay with the 2-man. If we get to warm-ups and they're with DeBrincat or Kane, I would be interested in that stack. As it is, the only thing that really interests me on the Detroit side is Larkin and Raymond as a 2-man until we see warm-ups. On the Montreal side, I think I guess you could go back to Montreal one here. I would do some sort of I don't think I would full stack. I would do a Caulfield Hudson 2-man, Suzuki Caulfield Hudson, something like that. Caulfield Line A. I don't know if I want a full stack. You can play Montreal one if you want. It is a good power play spot on both sides. I'm more inclined just to one-off for 2-man some power play pieces. I think that's what I do on both sides here. I don't particularly love stacking anything. I think my favorite line in this game would be Detroit 1 if Tarasenko's off and DeBrincat's on. But again, we won't know until warm-up.
Yeah, we mentioned yesterday's show that Montreal takes a lot of penalties. They're the most penalized team over the last 31 days in the league. One of the most penalized teams in the league, 3.8 times shorthanded per game. The Wings got 4 power plays last night. They went 0 for 4. They had a really good power play to start the season. It was probably running a bit hot. They were shooting over 20% as a unit with the Brincat up there. Then they went cold for a few, they went cold for 6 or 7 games, and then that's what led to the breakup. But it still worries me that Montreal's taking so many penalties, because I do think that the Canadiens over the last 6 weeks have been a better defensive team certainly than they were in October. Alex Carrier looked good last night. I thought, he adds he makes them better defensively as well. But there's Montreal still taking way too many penalties. So as long as Larkin and Raymond are together, I'll always have interest in Larkin and Raymond. Those two guys typically can score well. They haven't scored well with Vladimir Tarasenko there. I thought Tarasenko would be a better fit than he has been, but 1.7 expected goals, 2 actual goals per 60 minutes with him on the top line. I got to think that they get away from that. So Larkin, Raymond, and I'd have interest in a lot of different players that they put up there. I mean, we just won't know until warm-ups. I swear to God, at this point, I would take a Tyler Mott on the top line, just to get the price down, do something different. I don't know, but Montreal's still taking so many penalties that Detroit is still in a really, really good power play spot. So while I don't necessarily love the 5-on-5 matchup for Detroit, and I don't like their 5-on-5 scoring, they can easily get 5 power plays here tonight, go 2 for 5 or something like that, and then they have a great game. So I do have interest in Larkin, Raymond, X. Just have to wait to see what warm-up is. Don't have as much interest in DeBrincat, in Kane. They actually played reasonably well with Andrew Kopp. I do worry that they are going to break up the lines. So I'd be more interested in a one-off DeBrincat or something like that than I would be full stacking. On the Montreal side, it's back to the top line. What I will say about the Montreal top line, they played half the season together last year, were pretty good. Started the season pretty bad this year, which is why they were broken up after the first couple weeks. Their last 40 minutes together, they've been pretty dominant. And 40 minutes, because they've only been together for 3 or 4 games now, right? They had, when Laine came back, they left Alex Newhook on the top line for 3-4 games, and it's only been recent that they moved Slafkovsky back. So it hasn't been a huge sample for Montreal's top line of late. And we should say, hasn't exactly been the best of the best lately. Montreal's last 5 games: Anaheim, Pittsburgh, Winnipeg, Buffalo, Detroit. It's not really a tough lineup, but it's Detroit again here tonight. So I really do like Montreal 1. They're not really coming in with that much ownership. 3.3% ownership, 7.1% top 2 stack. There's 17.6. They're not getting a lot of ice time anymore, which is what really worries me. Suzuki's 18 to 19 minutes, where that guy, there are times he was regularly 21 minutes. That's a bit of a concern, but Detroit's penalty kill is still pretty bad. Montreal's power play has improved their shot rate 23% since Lane Hudson joined it. So I do like Montreal 1. Really like Patrick Laine as a one-off again, if you want to go in that direction. But Montreal 1's my favorite line in this game.
Yeah, Laine going early. He's going for the Cy Young. I think 7 goals, 1 assist. Off to a good start in the first half of the year. It's obviously not the first half of the year, but it is the first half of the year for him. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 2.6 total heading into New Jersey. The Devils have a 3.8. This is a brutal matchup for Pittsburgh, especially when the Devils are home. They're going to see, like, that Crosby line is going to see a fair bit of that Kovacevic-Siegenthaler pairing. They'll probably see a fair bit of Nico Hischier, Timo Meier. Now Stefan Nason is back on that line. That line, I don't know. I don't even know why they ever broke them up. They've been absolute nitrous at both ends of the ice. Now I think that gives you two legitimate lines you can play in DFS for the Devils. No matchups are really concern me. It's kind of a pick your poison. I think, like, I would lean a little bit towards the Hischier-Nason line just because they're a little bit cheaper and they have excellent offensive numbers. It would allow you to get in a better stack. It's just a matter of how you want to build, like, because Hughes and Bratt are a great play as well. I just slightly prefer Hischier and Nason. They'll see that Crosby matchup, and they have not been good defensively this season. Yes, Pittsburgh has gotten better defensively over the past month, but they're still not a good defensive team. I like that Hischier line the best on the Devils side. On the Pittsburgh side, like, I'm pretty much out on that Crosby, Raquel, Rust line. Like, that Kovacevic pairing is brutal. That Hischier line is brutal. You happen to get one or two in MMA, fine. You leave it. You don't have to X them out. You want to go to, like, Malkin and Bunting. Like, I'm not excited about it, so I'm pretty much out on Pittsburgh here.
Yeah. Again, New Jersey does use Kovacevic and Siegenthaler at home quite a bit. Toronto was there like 10 days ago or something, and Austin Matthews was on the ice for over 80% of Austin Matthews' 5-on-5 ice time was against the Kovacevic-Siegenthaler pairing. Like, they are pretty regularly sent out against top lines. To put a point on how good they've been, 1.5 expected goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 at home this season. They've been on – New Jersey's played 18 home games, and that pairing has been on the ice for 4 goals against in 18 games. It is absurd how good they are. Add that with Nico Hischier, so I'm out on Pittsburgh 1. Pittsburgh 2, it's interesting that Cody Glass is there. Like, he's not a good offensive player, but he's not bad defense. Like, he's a good defensive player. I just don't know if that line is going to last. And, Glass could get moved off it. They don't, Bunting and Glass won't get a ton of ice time either. Like, I think of the Pittsburgh lines, I'd rather play Pittsburgh 2 as a filler going into New Jersey. But, like, just looking at the filler lines we've already gone through, I'd way rather go play that Horvat-Siplikov line from the Islanders than play Pittsburgh here tonight. So I'm not really excited on the Penguins as a whole. This is a New Jersey game for me. It's good and bad that Stefan Nason is back on that Hischier line. It's good because I think it makes them playable again. Because, like, once he was moved off, I had no interest in playing that line. It's bad because now New Jersey really has 2 playable lines, I think. And the Hischier line is arguably in the best matchup going up against the Crosby line. Like, the Crosby line's still not good defensively. 2.9 expected goals against. So they're both fairly close for me. I think I would go back to Hughes, Bratt, and Platt just because Bratt gets 19, sometimes 20 minutes. Jack Hughes gets 20 plus. Platt doesn't get a lot, but I think that's fine. At 19,800 going against the depth from Pittsburgh, that line's at 3.4 goals per 60 minutes. I really, really do like going back to Bratt, Hughes, Palat here. If you want to turn it into a power play stack, take off Palat, put on Nason, put on Hischier, something like that. I think that's perfectly fine. Pittsburgh's penalty kill has really been on a slide. They've actually been saved by their goaltending, which is kind of hard to believe considering how the Pittsburgh goaltending's gone this year. But I really, really do like the Hughes line again. He had 13 shots the other night. It's like
something ridiculous like
that. Like these guys are just tremendous offensively. It's a perfect matchup. 12% ownership is like a little high, but honestly, on an 8-game slate at home with the highest total on the board in a really good matchup, I think that honestly it's fine. So again, if you want to take off Palat, put in Hischier or Nason or something like that, I think that's fine. But it's the Hughes line that I like best in this game. And honestly, I really don't have a lot of interest in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, me either. Yeah, it's kind of a pick your poison with the Devils, which is annoying. Columbus Blue Jackets with a 3 total heading into Philly. The Flyers have a 3.5 total. Is this the only 6.5 on the board? Well, no, the Devils game is a 6.5. This is the only other 6.5 on the board. Flyers made a slight adjustment to their lines. They flip-flopped Farabee and Tippett. So it's Tippett, Couturier, Konechny, Michkov, Frost, Farabee, Brink, Cates, Forrester. That puts that top line at 15,500, the same price as Columbus won here. The sample with Tippett up there is a bit leaky defensively, what we can say. Push comes to shove here. I think I prefer Columbus one. We know that Monahan, Voronkov, Marchenko have been good all season. 3.85 expected goals, 5.63 actual goals. A lot of their time, whether it's at home or on the road, comes with Werenski. That Couturier line with Tippett and Konechny, 3.25 expected goals against per 60, 4.5 actual. That's not really surprising because the Flyers goaltending sucks. It is Sam Ertson. He sucks. I like Columbus 1 here. Columbus 2, not so much. So I think it would be Columbus 1 or bust for me on the Columbus side. On the Flyers side, like Flyers 1 is fine. But this is the first practice that Torts has changed his lines in a couple weeks. And you know that motherfucker is giddy to just blow some shit up. So, like, I don't know if I really want a full stack here. I'm fine with connecting one off. I'm fine with the Michkov one off. I'm fine with the Tippett one off. I think if I was going to full stack a Flyers line, it would be Cates, Forrester, and Brink. They are super cheap. Where are we here? Let me find it. There it is. They're 8,200. Not that there's a really super expensive spot, but like if you do want a power play stack the Devils or something like that, I think like a 2-mana Brink Forrester, Cates Brink, or Cates Forrester is fine because you know that line gets matched up with the middle 6 of Columbus, and they are awful. And that line, that Cates line, has been legitimately good in over 100-minute sample. So, like, I'm fine with some Flyers one-offs of their big boys, but, like, if I was going to even think about stacking something, I think it would be the Flyers third line. But my favorite line in this game is the Columbus top line.
So, this is a decent power play spot for the Flyers, right? Because Columbus does take penalties. Their penalty kill is obviously not very good. I mentioned this last night on Twitter, but Patrick Laine has now played 8 games since returning from injury, and he has 7 power play goals. That's as many power play goals as the Flyers have in their last 25 games as a team. 25 games. It goes back to October. That Flyers top power play unit, they've had some changing parts, especially on the blue line, but amongst the core of Couturier, Konechny, and Matvei Michkov, 5.3 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-4, and that's shooting 19%. If they shot 19%, they would be one of the most efficient power plays in the league this year. and they're scoring like 40% less than the league average for a top power play unit, and that is with an elite shooting percentage. They are just not generating anything. They are not very good. That's what concerns me about this, is like, this is a very good 5-on-5, very good power play matchup, but the Flyers power play is just atrocious again. And now you have to think about getting there at 5-on-5, and they can. Like, Konechny, Tippett, and Couturier can get 3 goals at 5-on-5, like 2 goals and then an empty netter or something, and you're laughing. Konechny gets one shorthanded, maybe. Those types of things. Like, they can absolutely do it. At 17.8% ownership, like, the Columbus top line is coming in at half the ownership, right? And that Columbus top power play unit, by contrast, has actually been good this year, like above average for a number 1 power play unit. So where Philly's literally been one of the worst power plays in the entire NHL, the Flyers have been or the Blue Jackets rather have been above average as a top power play unit. They're perfectly correlated as well, where the Flyers top line is not perfectly correlated. Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov, 15,500, 8.5% ownership. As you mentioned, really high expected goals rate, 5.5 actual goals per 60 minutes. At the low end, Marchenko only played like 13 minutes the other night, but Columbus was also up, I think, 4-0 from like until like the last 10 minutes of the game. So like their top guys really didn't play a ton. Typically you'll get like 17 to 20 minutes between the 3 of them per game. So like good ice time, perfect correlation. Flyers goaltending, you mentioned it. I was looking at their goals saved above expected. The Flyers goalies are basically costing them 1 goal every 2 games. They've been bad. So at half the ownership, I think I'd rather go play Columbus 1 here tonight. So if you want to play the Flyers, I think I would honestly probably focus on the power play guys, even though it's not a good power play spot, just because they're the guys that usually get ice time, right? Like Michkov's been getting a little bit more of late, but he's reliably at least like 14 to 15 minutes. Obviously, Konechny plays a ton. Couturier, when he's not getting healthy scratched, usually gets some good minutes. So I would focus on the power play guys for Philly, but considering the high ownership rates, I think I agree with you. Like Philly 3, like a 2-man to play along with like a super expensive Winnipeg stack elsewhere or something like that is what I would like best from the Flyers. What I like best in this game is Columbus 1, and it's for me, like it's not particularly close. So Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov for me. I don't have any interest in the Columbus depth. I'd have more interest in the Philly depth. So like a Brink Cates 2-man, Forrester Cates, like something like that is probably what I like best on the Flyer side.
Yeah. Merzlikins against Urson. No wonder it's a 6.5.
Yeah. And Clayton just asked, and it's a good question, how's the Flyers PK? It's nowhere near as good as it was last year. Like it was kind of fine to start the season. Over the last 31 days, 2nd most shot attempts against, 5th most goals against. So after a fine start, like about average start, it's been getting worse as the season's gone on.
Rico, you know what to do. Let's move on. Minnesota Wild with a 2.4 total. Heading into Winnipeg, the Jets have a 3.1 total. Minnesota played last night against the Panthers. They lost in overtime. They now have the lowest total on the slate going into Winnipeg. That's tough sledding, man. Panthers and Jets back-to-back, that's just brutal. That Lowry, Appleton, Niederreiter line at home sees top competition. At home, they've been absolutely disgusting. I don't have a ton of interest here in Minnesota 1. They are fully correlated against a penalty kill that isn't great, but it is Connor Hellebuck. And the Wild do have the lowest total on the slate, tied with Seattle. That's not the company you really want to be keeping. And they're getting ownership, too. It's not like you're going to get them at like 2-3%. They're coming in at 6.5%. I don't particularly love them. If you happen to get some in MME, that's fine. I don't have any interest in the depth of Minnesota. Those lines have been very low offensively. They have been very good defensively. The Winnipeg side is a little more interesting. So obviously the Lowry Niederreiter line goes out against top competition, and that Connor Scheifele-Velarde line goes out against the bottom six of the other team. The issue I'm kind of running into here is that third line has Hartman and Foligno on it, and they've generally been nasty defensively. Now, if you want to go by the flow chart, this is a pretty bad matchup. So the flow chart says play them. Also, it's Jesper Wallstedt in net. He's not some slapdick AHLer. He's a legitimate prospect. I don't know, man. Like, this game is giving me weird vibes because I want to fade it, but I have a feeling it's going to be a high-scoring game. I could feel it down on my plums. I think I prefer Winnipeg 1 to Minnesota 1. Just because Winnipeg 1 is fairly power play reliant, and Minnesota's power play or penalty kill is a bag of ass. So, I think I would go Winnipeg 1 over Minnesota 1. They're both in pretty brutal matchups, but I'll take the home team here, the lower ownership. It's a third less ownership. Minnesota won 6.5 on the road. Winnipeg 2.1% at home. Yes, there's a little bit of a price difference, but I think I would go to Winnipeg 1 over Minnesota 1.
Yeah, I'll start on the Minnesota side. I'll note one thing. Wallstedt hasn't been very good this year in the AHL. He's been getting lit up. Now, Minnesota's good enough defensively where they can make even a below-average goalie look competent to good. Here's the thing is I don't usually have interest on teams going into Winnipeg. And one thing we should note about Minnesota is this is their 5th game in 8 days, and this is a road back-to-back. So there's been some travel, lots of hockey in the last week for them. At the same time, since Zuccarello came back, that top is with Eriksson still out. That top line has been getting a ton of ice time. Zuccarello's at 20.5 minutes since he came back. Rossi's at 21.5 to 22 minutes. Kaprizov's over 24 minutes. I'm reticent to go to a line just because they're getting lots of ice time, but this line is getting a lot of ice time. You know what I mean? And I don't like going up against Connor Hellebuck. What's really holding me back here is the Minnesota power play. We mentioned it on yesterday's show. The power play is not very good. And I was looking over the NHL, the last 15 games for teams in the NHL. Minnesota is last by power play opportunities per game, tied with St. Louis. So, not only are they not drawing any power plays, but the ones they do get, they're not doing much with them. So that's what's kind of holding me back from really being more in on Minnesota. But if that entire line is going to play 21 to 24 minutes, and they've been good, right? So far this season, 4.3 goals per 60 minutes as a top line, 225 minutes together. Rossi and Kaprizov have seemed to have found some chemistry over the last couple seasons. The only line I have interest in from the Wild side is that top line. This isn't a spot where I'm looking at the depth. I do have a little bit of interest in the Wild here. The thing is the only reason that I would really want to play Minnesota here tonight is because they have low ownership. But if I want low ownership, like you mentioned, I'll just go play Winnipeg instead, right? You mentioned that low ownership on Winnipeg. They're coming in at 2.1% ownership, 11.4% top 2 stack. They're only $1,000 more expensive than the Minnesota top line. Minnesota penalty kill is abominable. It has been for a couple years now. That hasn't been any better under any coach, and it hasn't been any better no matter the defensemen are healthy or injured. It's kind of wild. No pun intended. Pun kind of intended. But that top line does get they do get their minutes as well. 19 on the low end lately for Velarde. On the high end, Scheifele Connor push 21 minutes sometimes. They get ice time. They're on with the empty net. I would much rather play Winnipeg 1 here tonight. I understand wanting to play Minnesota 1. And if I was 20 maxing, I would almost certainly have like 1 Minnesota, line up out of those 20 or something like that, because they just get so much ice time, and they're not like a 24K Tampa Bay, Colorado, where they get 22 minutes of ice time. They're under 20K. So like, you don't need 4 goals or 2 shot bonuses and all that stuff. Like, you could probably get there with like 2 correlated goals and maybe 1 shot bonus or something like that. So like, I don't mind Minnesota 1, but Winnipeg 1 is easily my favorite line in this game.
Yeah. Magnus. I saw someone talking about Magnus Hellberg. Jesper Wallstedt has not been good this season, like you mentioned. Maybe he wants to pull a Askarov and get to another team and then get buried in the NHL. Although Askarov is starting today against the Oilers, so good for him. Buffalo Sabres with a 2.6 total heading into Boston. The Bruins have a 3.3. Holy fuck, this game sucks. Pasternak, Zacha, Geeky, 16,300, 15.6% top 2 stack, 23.7% ownership. Oh, man. It makes me want to stick a soldering iron in my eyeball. I don't think I will do that, though, because that sounds like it hurts. Now, hear me out. That top line has been decent for a while now. 2.9 expected goals, 3.1 actual. Thompson, Tuck, Zucker, they have been atrocious defensively. I don't know, man.
I mean, do we really think those lines are going to stay together after what happened last night?
Oh, absolutely not. I don't listen. 24% line is just insane to me for Boston. Like, as the lines are constituted, I honestly prefer going to Marchand, Lindholm, Coyle. You got me. I'm touting Elias Lindholm. 13,400, 6.6% projected ownership. Like, if they do stay together, Peterka, Cousins, Quinn couldn't stop a nosebleed defensively. So, like, Lindholm and Marchand have a pretty good sample offensively this season, most of it with Justin Brazeau. Charlie Coyle isn't a world beater, but I think he's better than Justin Brazeau. So, like, listen, I have issues stacking Boston without Pasternak. So, like, if you want to leave off Coyle and go Lindholm, Marchand, Pasternak for a nice, spicy, expensive Boston stack to get a little bit different in a high ownership game, I'm about it. I never love stacking Boston, but this is back-to-back on the road. Buffalo just got their brains beat in. If there's any time to stack Buffalo or to stack Boston, tonight is the night. On the Buffalo side, again, like as Cliffy alluded to, I don't think these lines stick together. It is Korpisalo in net. He has been better of late.
He's just been flat out a lot better than Swayman.
Yeah, Swayman sucks. But like Korpisalo's I have to at least balance myself out. If I'm going to tout the Bruins, I have to bash them in some little way here. But after the start Korpisalo had to this season, he's really turned it around. He has been their better goalie. Boston has been much better defensively of late. Without knowing the lines, I think I would do like a Thompson one-off or a Quinn one-off or something like that. But like, really probably out on the Sabres.
Hey, I'll keep it short. I don't have interest in Buffalo here tonight, but they do have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever, right? Like breaking that winning streak on a road back-to-back in Boston with the first half that Boston's been having it would give us a week's worth of just absolute goldmine content from the Boston sports radio realm. Yeah, I don't have a lot of interest in the Sabres. On the Boston side, honestly, I think I prefer the Pasternak line. Like they have been using Lindholm more in shutdown matchups. So I do think Lindholm would go out against Thompson. And like, I had a breakdown of some of the Buffalo goals against over on social media today. And like Dylan Cousins' expected goals against rates for his career, like his defensive impacts are typically not very good. That guy just has absolutely zero defensive awareness, like none. You could say like 2 of the first 5 goals were basically his fault. Like there's always a cascading, sequence of events that cause a goal. It's never just one thing. But in his case, it looked like it was basically his fault. Anyways, Pasternak, Zacha, and Geeky going out against that Cousins line. Like you mentioned, the Boston top line, 3.1 expected goals, 3.2 actual goals. Pasternak has 43 shots in his last 10 games. He hasn't been lighting it up because he's only shooting like 8 or 9% in that stretch, but you got to figure that's going to turn around at some point. Nothing cures what ails, like facing the Buffalo Sabres. So you get secondary matchups. That line has been very good. There is just a pile of ownership on them. I think I would turn this into some sort of power play stack. Now, the Boston power play has been bad, not quite Philadelphia bad, but still bad. But the Sabres have been one of the most penalized teams in the league of late. I was looking over the last 31 days. Obviously, Montreal's still at the top. Utah is just after them. And then it's Buffalo for most times shorthanded per game. So a bad power play can still get there 1 out of every 5 chances. So I don't mind Boston top line, take off Geeky, probably put in Marchand or Lindholm or something like that. But it's Boston 1 for me that I like best. I don't have a particular issue going to Boston 2. I just, in a matchup like this, I feel like if Buffalo doesn't pull out a surprise win, this feels like one of those games where David Pasternak just obliterates a team by himself. So I would have a hard time leaving Pasternak off. I'd probably go Boston 1, focus more on the power play guys, no interest on the Buffalo side.
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly love that top line, but like I cannot stack Boston without Pasternak. So I don't know. You do what you need to do there. This game has absolute festival written all over it. Ottawa Senators with a 2.6 total. Heading into Vancouver, the Canucks have a 2.9 total. Ottawa going Tkachuk, Batherson, Norris, Stützle, Giroux, Gaudette, Pinto, Cousins, Amadio. Vancouver going Pettersson, DeBrusk, and Linus Carlson, Philip DiGiuseppe, JT Miller, and Besser, Garland, Suter, Joshua.
So just real quick, Vancouver did morning skate while we were on.
Up there,
they mercifully moved Linus Carlson off the Pettersson line and put Connor Garland with him. So DiGiuseppe stays with Miller and Besser. DeBrusk, Pettersson, and Garland is the second line.
We did it. Chemtrails be damned. We did it. Like I know people aren't going to be super excited about Philip DiGiuseppe being there with Miller and Besser, but like they have a long sample together of being very good together. DiGiuseppe is only 2,600 here tonight. Like this isn't the best matchup. That top line for the Senators has been pretty good defensively. The one thing I will say is at home, that Miller line goes out, on the road too. They go out a ton with Quinn Hughes. And I don't know who's the guy who tracks the data. Is that Corey Snager? Or I just butchered his name. Quinn Hughes this season he won the Norris last year. His season this year has been so much better than the one last year, not by like points or whatever, just by like tracking his play. I don't mind Vancouver 1 here just because Hughes is just an elite defenseman going out there with them. It is Ullmark in net for the Sens, who's been absolutely incredible recently. I don't mind that Miller.
Yeah. one more thing about this game. This literally just came down. Allmark's not starting. Not completely confirmed yet, but it looks like it's going to be Levi Merilainen starting for the Sens.
A gene company? All right. We are going with Miller, Besser. No, I mean, like, it doesn't really change much for me. Like, I never really look at the starting goaltender and go like, oh, yeah, unless it's like a Jonas Johansson. Like, unless you're Jonas Johansson that bad, like, I don't really put too much stock in goaltending because they're just weird creatures and anything can happen. The analysis doesn't really change. I do like that DiGiuseppe, Miller, Besser line. They're coming in. No one's playing them. No one ever plays them. 1.4% top two stack, 1.4% projected ownership. I do think there's merit to going Pettersson, DeBrusk, Garland, though. 15,700. One, their 5-on-5 matchup is a little bit better. For some reason, like Stützle, Giroux, Gaudette just haven't been it. You know what I mean? Like, you would think that would have been a better line, but they just really haven't. I just, like, Pettersson has been getting yo-yoed on and off the power play. DeBrusk is on the top unit. Garland's on the top unit. That line isn't fully correlated anymore. If that line was fully correlated, I've had a little bit more interest. I'm going to go with the lower ownership and the lower price with Besser, Miller, DiGiuseppe. Pettersson line's fine. Don't get me wrong. But I do worry a little bit about Pettersson this season. On the Ottawa side, that top line has been very, very good. This is a very, very bad matchup. So I think, like, if you get there in MME, that's fine. They have almost an 8% top two stack. But Miller and Besser historically have been great defensively, mostly because Quinn Hughes goes out with them a lot of the time. So I don't particularly love prioritizing Ottawa 1 here. If you get a little bit in single entry, that's fine. The second line, they have not been good together, so I don't have a ton of interest there. Honestly, if you need a filler, I don't mind like a Pinto Amadio 2-man. But really, I don't have a ton of interest in Ottawa here.
I'll be quick. The only line I have interest in this game is Besser, Miller, DiGiuseppe. Elias Pettersson taken off the power play. Elias Pettersson, 23 shots in his last 15 games, about 1.6 shots per game over his last 15 games. The fact that he's taken off the power play is probably indicative of something that the team is seeing. Miller, Besser, DiGiuseppe, at least, as you mentioned, like over the last 2 years, they're at about 3 goals per 60 minutes scored. So at least they're producing offense. Miller and Besser, on the power play. Ottawa does have does take a fair amount of penalties. They're 3.1 times shorthanded per game over the last 31 days. And the goalies have struggled a bit on the penalty kill. I'm just seeing now that Allmark was the first goalie off the ice at morning skates. That usually indicates a starter, so it might be Allmark, actually. It made me a little bit less interested in Vancouver. The only line I'm interested in is Besser, Miller, and DiGiuseppe. I'm going to be honest. I don't think I'm stacking anything out of this game. I like this. To me, this game screams 3-1 the whole way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to give a little bit of thought to that Miller line just because they're so cheap. But, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get there. Seattle Kraken with a 2.4 total. Heading into Vegas, the Golden Knights have a 3.2. Seattle going McCann, Beniers, Kakko, Schwartz, Stevenson, Burakovsky, Bjorkstrand, Wright, Tolvanen. Vegas going Eichel, Stone, Dorofeyev, Carlson, Olofsson, Howden, Hurdle, Kolasar, Pearson. On the Seattle side, the only line that interests me is Bjorkstrand, Wright, Tolvanen. You don't need to full stack, but I think if you do have at least one piece, it should be Bjorkstrand. Vegas just doesn't take penalties. So, like, the power play isn't really a huge factor here, but Bjorkstrand is, the shooter on that line. I would probably 2-man like Wright, Bjorkstrand, something like that. If you're not going to full stack, those would be the two that I prefer. don't mind Tolvanen, obviously. On the Vegas side, it would just be that top line. Like, I have no interest in these depth lines. Carlson, Olfsson, Howden doesn't interest me. Hurdle, Kolesar, Pearson doesn't interest me. Eichel, Stone, Dorofeyev is interesting, at least from the sense that they're under 20K. They have positive leverage. They have a top two, a high top two stack. Eichel and Dorofeyev have a pretty big sample, not like a massive sample, but they're up over 100 minutes. They're okay, but a lot of that was with Barbashev, I think. Stone and Eichel have a very good history together, so I do like that Vegas top line. Seattle penalty kill isn't great. McCann, Beniers, Kakko should be a decent defensive line. I still defer to Eichel, Stone, Dorofeyev here. I don't know if I'm going to get to them. I haven't decided what I want to do yet. I don't particularly love the line. If it was fully correlated, I think I would have more interest. Eichel needs to shoot the puck more. I don't know. Like, I like them. I don't love them. Will I get them single entry? They're on the list. So that's basically the only line I have interest on Vegas. And on Seattle, it's that right Bjorkstrand line.
Yeah. On the Seattle side, should note Philip Grubauer starting too. It's not going to be Joey Decord. So that is it. Over the last 2 seasons, that's been a pretty big step down for Seattle. That makes a good matchup even better for Vegas. I'll go through a few numbers with you. The Stevenson, Schwartz, Burakovsky line at 5-on-5, 90 minutes together, 1.9 expected goals, 0 actual goals scored. Beniers and McCann in their time without Jordan Eberle, 2.4 expected goals, 2.1 actual goals scored. That's about 15% worse than league average. So yeah, I agree with you. Seattle third line, going back to right Bjorkstrand. The thing is like, I don't know, maybe a Winnipeg power play stack, but basically other than that, like there aren't a ton of super expensive options. Like there aren't a ton of reasons why you would play a 3K Shane Wright and 3,600 Bjorkstrand or even 3,000 Tolvanen or something like that. But like if for some reason you do need a cheap 2-man, that is one of the 2-mans I would consider on this slate, along with Philly that we talked about earlier. I don't know. I think the Vancouver, like that Bluger Sherwood line would kind of be in there as well, but like that's basically it. There's only a few that I would use. So that's the only, I agree, only line I have interest in on the Seattle side. I have a lot of interest in that Vegas line. They are coming in with a fair bit of ownership, 13%, but it is a 17.8% top 2 stack. With Grubauer starting, like I said, it's a big step down in net. I honestly think Vegas is going to be sending them out against the Stevenson line. And that line is just not good.
Shocker.
I don't know what else to say. It is worrisome that these are the 2 least penalized teams in the league over the last 31 days and 2 of the 3 least penalized teams in the league on the season. So there might only be a couple power plays in this game. That is a bit of a worry. But that Vegas top line, even without Barbashev there, has been good offensively. With Barbashev there, they're good offensively. As long as it's Eichel, Stone, doesn't really matter who's on the other side of me for them. Thing is like at 13% ownership, like it's the same ownership rate as that Hughes line from New Jersey, which also isn't perfectly correlated. Again, Winnipeg is coming in at a fraction of the ownership. Of the expensive lines here tonight, I would have Vegas third, but they are in consideration for me along with Winnipeg and New Jersey as one of the expensive stacks I'm looking at here tonight.
Yeah. Maybe it's just because they're in Seattle. They're like in the corner of the world that like I'm asleep when they play. But like Beniers has been terrible offensively this season.
He's been other than his rookie year, he's been bad offensively, but he's been really good defensively. So it's like one of those things, like he's actually not a bad real life player. He's just a terrible DFS player.
Yeah. He's morphing into Wenberg.
I was thinking like,
anyway,
if everything works out, he'll turn into like a Ryan O'Reilly type, like 55 points with great defense. But that's if everything works out.
Watch out, Tim Hortons. Let's talk about defensemen. I need a break. Let's talk about defensemen here. Zach Werenski, Rasmus Dahlin, Quinn Hughes, Dougie Hamilton, Josh Morrissey, Brennan Montour, Noah Dobson, top of the board. I think Werenski's in a great spot here tonight. I know, people have their feelings about the Flyers. I just think Werenski's been unbelievable this season. He's been playing, his last 5 games, he's played 26 minutes or more. I do like Werenski here. Rasmus Dahlin, like you said last night, you're worried about his minutes, and he played 27. But he is back-to-back here, and he's coming off an injury. So I'm not 100% sure the workload he's going to get here tonight. He didn't really factor into the game yesterday. So I think it's Werenski. I think Dougie Hamilton is in a fair spot. As we mentioned yesterday or the other show, minutes could be a concern there. He plays like 17, 18, but he is very efficient. Josh Morrissey's okay, but I don't think I'll be living in the top range if I don't play Werenski.
Yeah, Werenski, I was looking earlier. He's projected for 2.8 more fantasy points than the next closest defenseman, which is Quinn Hughes. So it's Zach Werenski and then everybody else. I really do like Werenski in that matchup. And especially without, there are a few expensive lines to play or whatever, but with the lack of 23 or 24K lines, I think it's a good night to put him in if you have the cap space. I really do like Werenski here. He's at the top of my board too. Then I have Dougie Hamilton. He completely burned me the other night when Luke Hughes went off and Dougie did nothing. But it is another very good matchup for him. So Dougie Hamilton and Quinn Hughes, those are the 3 of the expensive defensemen I'm considering. Moritz Seider, I don't really love Detroit again here tonight, but 2 things I'll say. One, Moritz Seider played 27 minutes last night in a regulation game without Simon Edvinsson in the lineup. And 2 is Montreal is going to be starting Caden Primo, and he has been much worse than Sam Montembeault this year. So Seider's fine. Morgan Riley, obviously. Alex Pietrangelo, he's been getting 22, 23 minutes. He's okay in the mid-price range. I don't mind Thomas Chabot, even if I'm not super high on Ottawa. If I have 4,700 left or whatever to put in one defenseman and it's the last guy in my lineup, I don't mind Chabot, but I'm not specifically targeting him. Cheap defenseman, I think there are 4 that stand out. Under 4K, I think there are 4 that stand out above the others. Luke Hughes, he's been getting a lot more minutes. He's basically been getting top pair minutes now for the last few weeks. Noah Hanifin at home for Vegas. Columbus and Ivan Provorov, with Dante Fabro out, they basically just played 3 defensemen. Provorov, Severson, and Werenski played between 23 and 28 minutes or something like that. And then the other 3 defensemen all played 12 or less. So if they do that again, Provorov's probably going to see a lot of minutes here. And then Ben Sherrod. Again, I don't like Ben Sherrod as a defenseman. He's the inverse of Matty Beniers. He's bad in real life, but good in DFS, where Beniers is the opposite. So Hughes, Hanifin, Provorov, Sherrod for cheaper defensemen. If you need punts, Matthias Samuelsson, I guess, from Buffalo, might have to block a lot of shots. Brett Pesce, along with Luke Hughes, has been getting a lot more minutes. I guess Rasmus Ristolainen from Philly, but I'm not super excited about the punt options here tonight. I think I'd rather live in that 3 to 4K range.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about goalies. Top range is not ideal. Honestly, I think it would be Markstrom or Korpisalo for me if I was spending above 8K. I don't particularly love it. I guess you could throw Lankin in that mix too. It's just I don't want to spend up over 8K unless it's, I don't know. I just don't trust these guys. Markstrom's been good this season, but the problem is the Devils are so good defensively. If he doesn't get a shutout, he's probably not going to hit value in DFS. So it would probably be Korpisalo or Lankinen up there. Obviously, Hellebuck at 7,900 makes some sense. If it is Ullmark for Ottawa.
Just to I just saw that coach said after practice that they are going to go to Maryland tonight. It's not Allmark. They're going to save Allmark.
Okay. Sorokin at 7,300 without facing Toronto without Matthews is at least in the conversation. I don't mind Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Like Cliffy says, the Sabres have the chance to do something really funny here tonight. But other than that, like, goalie sucks tonight, like more than usual.
Isn't Luukkonen starting? Didn't he play last night? Am I misremembering?
They just announced that he's going back to back.
Oh yeah, because he got pulled. Okay. There are like 3 expensive-ish goalies I don't mind here tonight. Connor Hellebuyck at 7,900, obviously at home against Minnesota, the team that hasn't been able to score. Joseph Woll. Islanders aren't good, man. Even without Matthews, maybe the Islanders fill the net, but Woll's at home, 8,100 against an Islanders team that has largely struggled to score this year. The other one is Kevin Lankinen. He's 8K. Don't mind him at home to Vancouver. So Lankinen, Hellebuyck, and Woll would be the 3 expensive goalies I'm looking at. What I'm not going to do is play 8,500 Samuel Ersson. It's got to be one of the funniest pricings of the season. I like that means he's getting a shutout. I hope everybody realizes that. The 2 cheaper goalies I was looking at were Allmark and Decord, but now it's Maryland and Grubauer. So, like, I'm going to be honest, there's not really a lot for cheap goalies on the board that I like here tonight. I guess UPL would be fine. Like, Wallstedt is fine, but
how about Wickens at 6,900?
I think, yeah, I think it's Sorokin. Like, if I'm going under like 7,600 or whatever, the only goalie I really have interest in is Sorokin. Although, as somebody mentioned in chat earlier, Marcus Hogberg is on the Islanders roster now. They already confirmed Sorokin starting. I'm pretty sure he's going to start. As long as Sorokin starts, he'd be the cheap goalie I'd look at and the only cheap goalie I really like tonight.
I was just about to ask you about Caden Primo, but I just saw his game log. Woo! Wow. How do they keep giving him starts?
Because they have back-to-backs once in a while.
No, but they don't have anyone in the AHL. That's better.
No, like they do have a pretty good prospect goalie, but they don't really have anybody like to bring up. Like if they were in a legit playoff race, I think maybe that they look to make a change there, but there's no need to do that right now.
Wow. All right. Didn't realize how bad he was this season. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
Speaking of the Habs, I'm going to go Homer for our last Saturday show before the Christmas break. I'm going Patty Laine. Man,
he is fun on the power play. I got to get a Laine jersey and replace this idiot.
Isn't that idiot on pace for like 105 points or something?
Listen, don't throw holes in my theory with logic, okay? I do prefer Pat the Bat, though. I am going to get a little spicy. I'm going to go Zach Werenski.
Ooh, that is spicy. I'd love to see it.
Yeah. Our Blue Jackets. We will be back. Remember, if you are interested in watching us on Monday, we will be on at 10 a.m. We have holiday travel to do. So 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday morning. We'll see you then. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.